Welcome into Pac-12 review. I am, yes, Michael Caratenuto at Diablos00 is where you can find me on Twitter. Hit me up. Well, the college football season comes to an end tonight. The college football playoff national championship game between, and I'm not going to say what they've been calling them, the Horned Frogs of TCU and the Georgia Bulldogs. TCU going for their first national title since, just a few minutes ago, 1938. And yes, I'm sure there's quite a few that were around for that, hopefully. No, but and Georgia last year, it was their first national title in 41 years, looking to go back to back tonight. Yes, neither one is a Pac-12 team. I said that obviously in the preview, which is, a little bit of a bummer, but we shall get to the national championship game. Apologies for Friday. There was a schedule mishap. And yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But anyway, back here for Pac-12 review. And since it is Monday, again, you're going to review, go over the whole bowl season. I know last Monday, again, talking about it, obviously the games came on and Friday wanted to get to that, and we'll get to that now. But yeah, just going over the whole bowl season again for the Pac-12, how it went. Friday, we're aiming to have the publisher Sun Devil Source for 24/7 Sports, Chris Cartman on. So that will be this Friday. Will not be any scheduling issues. We're aiming to do that, to go over, obviously, Pac-12 bowl season, transfer portal stuff, with what's going on with ASU, but even just throughout the conference in general. So we're set aiming, scheduling, schedules aside, but aiming to have Chris Cartman on Friday. And then we'll also, again, going to preview the national championship game today as well. And Friday, we'll obviously review the national title game and get into off-season stuff with Chris, as again, now as we hit January and as we hit stride into January, be about the middle of the month, and then you get into February, and then all of a sudden, as spring sports start kicking up, and then all of a sudden you get spring football. So, and I will actually aim on Friday as well for dates of spring football for the Pac-12 schools. So I'll see what is out there. Again, some may have not put dates on it yet, but I think there's quite a few that have. So we'll see that too. But again, that's for Friday. Today, like I said, we're going to review the whole bowl season for the Pac-12. It was the game. Some of the games were pretty insane roller coasters, last second losses, which are kind of a bummer for the conference. Frustration in the Rose Bowl again for Utah, especially for Cam Rising, 2 years in a row. This young man who's so talented gets banged up and can't finish the Rose Bowl game. So that we'll get to that. Obviously, the USC Tulane game was madness. But Washington and Texas, you look at that, Oregon and North Carolina, I mean, what it came down to. So, yes, those were, again, later bowl games. Oregon State's dominance, Washington State stumbling in their bowl game. But UCLA and Pitt, I mean, the way that came down to the end. So just a lot there. And then when we look, but looking at that, as we start with that, when you see, when we look at the Pac-12 bowl games, Oregon State got everything kicked off on December 17th with a 30-3 drubbing of Florida, giving the Beavers a 10-win season. Jonathan Smith, I mentioned it quite a bit before, but got a contract extension. Got a contract extension and a raise. And Oregon State, again, just building it up, and they've been patient. Jonathan Smith's been there for a minute, and tough season, first few seasons, and they stuck with them. And now look at that, a 10-win season. And like I said, they're 6 points away from, being 11-1 in a Pac-12 championship game and maybe headed to the college football playoff. And you can say, oh, well, that's a lot of big ifs. No, I'm not saying they were, 4 scores, 4 or 5 touchdowns away from it. I'm saying 6 points away, 2 field goals away from being in the Pac-12 championship game and having a shot. I mean, if they're 11-1, having definitely a shot to go to the college football playoff. And they'll, have a little bit of a target on their back next year. But man, the way they played. So yeah, they get the 30-3 win on that same day, though, in the and that was in the Las Vegas Bowl, pardon me. The same day in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl, Fresno State gets their 10th win of the season, 29-6 over Washington State. And Washington State finishes 7-6 on the season due to the Cougars. But yeah, I mean, Fresno State, again, a team that can obviously score points, but just 10-4, another solid season, a team that, again, they went toe-to-toe with Oregon State early in the season. Oregon State held on for the 35-32 victory. And then Fresno State the next week got beat up by USC 45-17. But I mean, again, a team that's Fresno State, a program for the longest time. It's not scared to play anybody, anywhere, anytime. Has pretty much been their motto. Pardon me. Well, model and motto. But yeah, they get the 29-6 victory over Washington State. Then we fast forward to December 28th, the San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl in Oregon. A late touchdown pass by Bo Nix. And they get the extra point. They hold on for the 28-27 victory. Drake May, the North Carolina quarterback, again, we get into the game, didn't throw for a ton of yards, but had a chance at the end to heave it, and Oregon able to knock it down. They win the game 28-27, and then Washington and Texas. Washington, 12th ranked Washington. And Oregon came into that game ranked 15th, by the way. Oregon State was 14th, by the way. So it'll be interesting to see the final rankings. I mean, granted, it is bowl games, and we'll see. But yeah, Oregon State was 14th. Oregon was 15th at the time. And then Washington, they were 12. And Texas was 20. Washington gets the 27-20 victory. Texas came Washington led going into the fourth quarter 20-10 and held on for the 27-20 victory. But yeah, it was a game that Washington pretty much led the whole time. And they finished 11-2 this year. For Washington, I mean, their one bad loss was to, and record-wise, was to Arizona State in Tempe on the road. And then they lost to is this the UCLA? Why am I drawing? Washington lost to ASU. Let's look. Oh, yeah, and UCLA. They lost back-to-back weeks. Their only 2 losses, and granted, they didn't play USC. they didn't play Utah because you're not going to play everybody. They skipped the schedule. They didn't play USC. They didn't play Utah. But yeah, they lost to UCLA 40-32 in the Rose Bowl. Came to Tempe the next week where they have struggled mightily. No matter who's coaching. And Kalen DeBoer did a hell of a job, obviously, this year up at UW. I mean, Michael Penix Jr., again, I'll talk about him a little bit more. But, yeah, I mean, they're back-to-back losses. Because they were 4-0, then 4-2, and then they won 6 to close out the regular season, including the Apple Cup domination of Washington State, which they won 51-33. So that's another team. I mean, you look at, and again, a few more points. I mean, they lost to UCLA. They were going by 40-32 by 8. Then they lost by a touchdown to ASU 45-38. You know, they won that ASU game and only dropped to ASU. They're playing USC in the Pac-12 championship game. So, yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to me how, again, so close, quite a few teams in the pack were, and we'll see what the Huskies can draw up next season. But that being said, yeah, for Washington, but still they get the 27-20 victory. And then we fast forward to December 30th, pardon me, the day before New Year's Eve, obviously. But the Sun Bowl in El Paso, oh my goodness, UCLA was up. Pitt comes charging back in the fourth quarter and gets a late field goal to win it 37-35. Very late field goal. They beat UCLA. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the UCLA quarterback, again, ended up going out of the game, but Pitt just kept hammering away. And, man, I mean, that fourth quarter, because the first 3 quarters, it was 28-21, UCLA going into the fourth, and they got outscored 16-7 for the final score. But Pitt was moving the ball, but it never seemed like UCLA up to the again, that fourth quarter, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson went out, but I got a little banged up, and it just seemed like from watching, like, oh man, Pitt's been constantly chasing. I don't know if they have enough to do it. Well, they did. They went 37-35. Then we go to the January 2nd games. Penn State beats Utah, like I said, in the Rose Bowl, 35-21. Cam Rising, unfortunately, second Rose Bowl in a row. Last year against Ohio State with the concussion, and then this year they said he had a brace on his leg. It's a knee injury, and he couldn't finish the game against Penn State. But man, Sean Clifford has been at Penn State for quite a while, obviously with the COVID extra year of eligibility, but 6 seasons. And Clifford again had a heck of a game. Man, and they had 2 huge passing plays for both his touchdown passes. But yeah, they win 35-21. They shut Utah out in the first and third quarter. They scored every quarter, 7 each in the first, second, and third, and then 14 in the fourth for Penn State. Utah 14 in the second and 7 in the fourth. But yeah, I mean, what what a Rose Bowl game. Again, it's just a bummer for Cam Rising 2 years in a row. And then we also had the Cotton Bowl where Tulane comes all the way back to beat USC 46-45. It was 28-14 at half, USC. It was 35-30 USC going into the fourth, and they get outscored 16-10 for the 1-point loss. And Caleb Williams, so I mean, threw 52 passes, over 450 yards, 5 touchdowns too. So we'll get to all of those, but yeah, just that's a quick hitter of the scores. Also, again, don't forget, like I said, tonight the national championship game, TCU playing Florida in SoFi Stadium in LA is where the national championship game is this evening. So hopefully those Horned Frog fans that were able to come to Glendale and watch them beat Michigan in the Fiesta Bowl. Just took the short trip over to the 10 a week later. Although I'm sure a lot of them had to go back to well, a little bit over a week because they played on New Year's Eve. Both those semifinal games, but hopefully they're in LA. Georgia obviously will have a strong contingent. I know with stuff they do. You see the commercials all year long, like the Taco Bell student section. So they'll send a bunch of students as well from each school to the game. And then, but it'll just be an insane atmosphere tonight for the national championship game. So going to step aside real quick. And then when we get back again, we'll start breaking down the just quick reviewing the bowl games. And and we'll get to the national championship as well here on Pac-12 review, because it is Monday. Yes, Pac-12 review. So we're reviewing the bowl games, and then doing a little fast forward preview, obviously, the national championship game tonight. But we'll step aside and be right back. Welcome back to Pac-12 Review. I am Michael Carasino at Diablo00 on Twitter here on the Sideline Sports Network. Again, a lot coming up, obviously, with the NFL playoffs here and Super Bowl. Sideline Sports, we will be here. Get to hang out with Eric Wilson, the Eagles fan. But that's okay. You know what? We're going to make Eric stylish. We're going to put him in some Cowboys gear, some good Cowboy stuff while he's here. And, we'll go from there. It's good stuff. Yeah, that'll never happen for him. But, hey, we can all wish. We can all strive for it. Anyway, you also see Eric Wilson tonight here on Sideline Sports, the Sports Arena. Be back at it. Yes, non-shameless plug. But, 10 o'clock Eastern on Sideline Sports. You can check out the Sports Arena. We'll be at it tonight. So, yes. Absolutely going from there. And so that'll be tonight. But as I said before the break, we are going to, again, just take a look back at the bowl games, gave you the scores. So the Pac-12 was 3-4 in bowl games. Oregon State, Oregon, and Washington with wins. Washington State, UCLA, USC, and Utah with losses. Oh, and by the way, I did forget to mention this part. So USC was number 10 going into that game. Tulane was number 16. In the Rose Bowl, Utah was number 8. Penn State was number 11 going in. So yes, great ranked matchups there. UCLA was 18, by the way. So, like I said, it'll be very interesting to see the final rankings after the national
What's up, Einstein?
My network has gone
championship game.
kaput.
You tried to save a buck on it?
Not so smart.
Well, there is a smarter way to save.
Oh.
Switch to Verizon.
That's right. For a limited time, get Verizon Unlimited for just
Sorry about
$25
this.
a
I
line,
do
guaranteed
not
for
know.
3 years. Brilliant! Only on Verizon.
Not in control, taken at mid-on. Well, that is really poor cricket, Arthur. That is bad.
Pardon that. My apologies. Yeah, my apologies for that. As unfortunately, I had clips and stuff saved and they just started playing wildly. But hey, you know what? Technology. It's got to be fun. But yeah, so the Pac-12 3-4 in games. Oregon State, like I said, they were ranked 14th, Oregon 15th, Washington was 12 going in their game, UCLA 18, USC 10, Utah 8. So yes, a lot of obviously ranked teams in the Pac-12 at the end of the season, going into bowl season. But 3-4 in bowl games, again, a little bit tough. And you look at UCLA last second loss, USC late loss. But we are going to start with the game that kicked it off, the Las Vegas Bowl, where Oregon State just absolutely pounded Florida, which was again a beautiful thing to see. And Tristan Gebbia, the senior quarterbacks that had been with the program, he did get to play quite a bit, actually. Through 6 passes, he was 5 for 6, 24 yards on touchdowns. Ben Gulbranson, who took over when Chance Nolan went down, and like I said all season long, if you watched, knowing like he grew in to that starting quarterback role, got more comfortable with the offense, and yes, they were able to run the ball, so that definitely made it huge. But yeah, it's one of those things where but Gebbia did get to play. Gebbia did get to play, which is good because again, Coach Jonathan Smith talking about how he gave a lot to the program. But yeah, Bengal Branson, again, solid game, 12 out of 19, 165 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. And his touchdown pass was an absolute laser to Silas Bolden, who had, man, this is, again, and it's a hell of a game, but 6 catches for 99 yards. I mean, just, couldn't get that one more yard, but still 16 and a half per reception and the 1 touchdown. And yeah, it was an absolute laser from Gulbranson to Silas Bolden. But yeah, defensively, you just saw what, Oregon State was able to do in that game. And yes, Florida started Jack Miller the third at quarterback. So Richardson didn't play. But Jack Miller was 13 of 22, 180 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. But yes, obviously they only had 1 field goal. But yeah, domination by Oregon State. I mean, Deshaun Fenwick, 21 carries for 107 yards. Jam Griffin, had 2 carries for 2 yards. I don't know if he was, again, some of these guys they're playing, but kind of limiting him. But Deshaun Fenwick, 21 carries, 107 yards, 5.1 per carry. Ben Gulbranson also threw in a rushing touchdown, as did Tyjon Lindsey and Jam Griffin, who had 2 carries for 2 yards, but he did have a touchdown run. Tyjon Lindsey had 1 carry for 8 yards and a rushing touchdown. So, I mean, you look at it, it was just complete domination by Oregon. I mean, Everett Hazer, kicker, 1 for 2 on field goals, 3 for 4 on extra points. Yeah, and it was, sorry about that. It was just, again, a solid performance. Like I said, all season long. I mean, Oregon State and they had, let's see, they had 4 sacks did the Beavers and 11 tackles for losses. So they were just constantly getting after Florida. I know, again, starting Jack Miller, the third quarterback, but still, it seemingly it wasn't going to matter because Oregon State, Jonathan Smith, they wanted to get to that 10-win mark, and they did. So just another team to look out for, and smacking an SEC team around. But yes, of course, SEC fans will talk out of both sides of their mouth, be excuses. Oh, well, Florida. Well, then you don't have the best conference. Once you have to start making excuses, there is no best conference. Just there's top teams, and there's recruiting. There's teams that recruit very well, and there's top teams in every conference. But yeah, I mean, Texas A&M this year, Auburn, Arkansas, they finished 7-6, but Ole Miss, I mean, Vanderbilt, Mizzou, Florida, Kentucky, so Florida, Mizzou, Vanderbilt, Auburn, and A&M were all under 500 overall, and then you got, anyway, I'm not going to bore you with that, but I'm just saying, SEC fans, you got blasted by Oregon State, Florida fans. So at least you got to go to Vegas and enjoy Vegas. I mean, that's a good reward in and of itself. But Oregon State wins that game. And again, hats off to, the season that the Beavers had, finishing 10-3. And yeah, like I said, get it in Washington and Oregon State right there. Again, you hit some speed bumps in the middle of the season, and that can get you, or any part of the season. But yeah, those two right there in the PAC next year. So that'll be interesting. Next up, the Washington State-Fresno State game. And again, the Bulldogs of Fresno State finished with 10 wins as well, too. They got to 10 wins, 10-4 overall. The Cougs finished 7-6. Cam Ward, I mean, he just had it was an interesting season for the Washington State quarterback. Because, I mean, 22 at 32 in this game, 137 yards, no touchdowns, but one interception. They couldn't run the ball. They ran it for 45 yards against this Fresno State defense. But Cameron Ward's season it's like, you see, I mean, they went into, and he played a heck of a game. They went into Madison and beat Wisconsin on the road early in the season. Huge matchup. Second week of the season, they win 17-14. So you're thinking, wow, Washington State, all right. And there were Pac-12 games where, win or lose, like they started to have strong first halves and just hold on in the second half is basically what it came to. Now, I don't think it's because of, Coach Dicker and his staff not making in-game adjustments, but it's just kind of Cam Ward's season 2, is right there. But man, it's just up and down. So yeah, his last game, I mean, and then you have Jake Haener, the quarterback for Fresno State in this game, 24-36, 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. 10 Jordan Mims. I mean, I remember I gave him the performer of the week, and not an overreaction, but 18 carries. When I watch this game, it's like this young man, it was just the first down and carry. 18 carries for 209 yards, 11.6 per carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. So this young man just chewed up that Washington State defense. You can say, again, as a team, they're in a bowl game, they're motivated. I can't stand that excuse, and don't accept the invitation. I always talk about the bonuses of getting the extra practices, which, again, leading into the next season is good. This game, again, on December 17th. So, I mean, a little, it's 2 weeks after the first game, but that's 2 more weeks of practices extra that they got. So, absolutely huge. But yeah, Jordan Mims, oh my goodness. And then the 2 touchdown passes from Jake Haener went to Nico Remigio, who he had 5 catches for 84 yards in the touchdown. And then Zane Pope had 4 for 62 in the other receiving touchdown. Remigio averaged 16.8 per reception, Pope 15.5. But you look at rushing, though, I mean, 209 yards. And then Haener, he did get sacked 4 times, and they had 6 tackles for loss of those. Cougs defense, again, playing competitive. And that's what, again, kept them in a lot of games. And not that Cameron Ward didn't, but it's just to kind of see. It's just weird. Sometimes when you say teams get into a groove and you're on momentum and it's huge, but if you get into like a kind of like funk and you're up and down and up and down, like a crazy graph chart, I think that affected Cam Ward just a little bit. So I don't. It was tough to put finger on. Even watching it in Pac-12 play, you see some games and you're like, man, the last game against Washington, like you knew. I mean, Washington had to win to have a shot to go to the Pac-12 championship game, which they didn't play Utah, but I think it was a common opponent tiebreakers. Utah won, and that's why Utah went back-to-back Pac-12 champions. But we'll get to that. So yeah, interesting season. Cougars finished 7-6 on the year, and we'll see what next year brings for them. Again, to me, it's just. And you can say this is overstating the obvious, but for Washington State, they put that they get more consistent, more on the up and up, no crazy high peaks or low valleys, and string full games together. That's another team. Again, you're looking at they finished 7-6. I'm not saying they beat Fresno State in the bowl game, but you're maybe looking at a different bowl game, not in the LA Bowl. You're looking at I don't know, maybe something different because you're looking at a team that, that went in at 7-5, but very easily could have been 8-4, 9-3. So it's just weird. It's just a very weird, and I'm sure that's what Cougs fans are. And again, I'm not trying to pick out a silver lining for them to hang on to. It's not like, rainbows and unicorns. Yeah, it's frustrating, but man, I looked at that team, and that was outside of there were two sure things. Washington State was going to make me really guess and picking games, and I didn't know how it would go. And unfortunately, Colorado was going to lose almost every week. So that being said, but yeah, 29-6, the final to that. And again, we'll see what the Cougs, Coach Dickert, again, does recruiting wise and all that good stuff. So now we fast forward to the Holiday Bowl. Yes, in San Diego. What a phenomenal game it was. Oregon tops North Carolina 28-27. They get their 10th win of the season as well. They finished 10-3. They were tied at 7 after 1. Carolina was up 21-14 going in the locker room and into the fourth because neither team scored in the third. And then Oregon outscored North Carolina 14-6 in the fourth to get the 28-27 victory. Bo Nix, I talked about 23-30. Again, phenomenal night there. 2 touchdowns, did throw an interception. But Bucky Irving, we talked about him in the Oregon rush game all year long. This young man, 13 carries, 149 yards, average 11.5 per touch, and 2 rushing touchdowns for Bucky Irving. No, Whittington, he got a lot of 11 carries, but 27 yards. They were able to bottle him up, but they couldn't bottle Bucky Irving up, man. That young man's speed is insane. Two that have the receiving touchdowns, Chase Cota had 3 catches, 42 yards, averaging 14 per catch, and the 1 touchdown. The other receiving touchdown, Troy Franklin, had 5 catches for 24 yards, but the 1 touchdown. Terrence Ferguson led Oregon with, tied for leading receptions with 5. Him and Franklin both had 5, but Ferguson had 84 yards, averaging 16.8 per reception. And that's just, a Oregon team under Dan Lanning, and yes, obviously, Oregon had one hell of a year, and you look at what Bo Nix did after that opening game and debacle. You could say, a neutral site game, which is in Atlanta, which is about 30 minutes from Athens, 35 minutes from the campus of Georgia. And it's one of those things where, but again, they got smacked, and that's that. They definitely got smacked and against Georgia, but ran off quite a few. Lost to Oregon State at the end of the season. Lost to They lost to Oregon State. They didn't lose to UC. Oh, they lost to Georgia. Yes. And then they lost to, Washington. Yeah. Washington beat them 37-34. Again, that's what I'm saying. Washington was right there. You don't lose to ASU. You head to a Pac-12 championship game. Utah doesn't at that point. Because then Oregon turned around the next week and beat Utah 20-17. So they did Washington a huge, huge favor there. But nonetheless, just a heck of a season. And Kenny Dillingham obviously had a lot to do with that. I know he was I saw he was voted like quarterbacks coach of the year, awarded that. And again, him working with Bo Nix and the offense that they ran. And obviously Arizona State is looking to get that and is looking to get that lightning on a bottle in a whole stadium next year. No, but I mean, Kenny Dillingham, obviously, with what he did with Bo Nix throughout the whole season, and then Bo Nix got a little banged up, wasn't really mobile, even in the Oregon State game. But Oregon State, again, they were down by 14 going into the fourth quarter and came back and won that game. So, but still, Oregon gets to 10 wins, huge for Dan Lanning, obviously in his first year as head coach at Oregon. But defensively, I mean, 2 sacks for Oregon, 4 tackles for losses. Drake May, though, I mean, that was the thing. This young man at North Carolina who had a hell of a season just could not get it going consistently against this Oregon defense. He did throw 3 touchdowns, so I'm going to say he was 18-35, but 3 of his 18 completions were touchdowns. 18-35, 206, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And they ran for 116 yards, which, again, Oregon ran for 209 and threw for 205. I mean, Oregon throws for 205. Carolina throws for 206. Oregon rushes for 209. Carolina only rushes for 116. And, I mean, they tried to get Elijah Green going. I mean, Green had 17 carries for 50 yards, so 2.9 per carry. Drake May had 12 for 45. And, again, that goes into he had positive yardage, and yes, he was sacked 2 times. So you got to figure, I mean, overcoming those sack yards, but to have 12 for 45. But they averaged 3.4 a carry. Oregon averaged 6.5 a carry. But yeah, I mean, with what Dan Lanning's doing in recruits, I know since Kenny Dillingham came to ASU, one of the top quarterbacks in the country flipped from Oregon to UCLA. And is going to go play for Chip Kelly. And this young man was just in the East-West high school bowl game, but the East-West game where you see the top talent, guys going schools all over the country. They make their commitments on the show. Some make their commitments. There's a few juniors that did. But, yeah, the top quarterback, and he was headed to Oregon to play for Kenny Dillingham. And I'm surprised that Coach, I mean, he flipped to UCLA, and it was Oregon, UCLA, and ASU was in there, but he was going to play for Coach Dillingham. I'm just wondering what that was like. But again, it's recruiting. It's madness in a way, but very awesome. So, but yeah, 28-27, the Ducks get the win, and man, what a game the Holiday Bowl was, and that was followed up by the Alamo Bowl, where Washington was up 10-3. They beat Texas 27-20. They're up 10-3 after the first, 13-3 into halftime. They go into the fourth. It's 20-10 that they're up. Texas did outscore them in the fourth, 10-7, but not enough because 27-20 was the final. The Huskies, Michael Penix Jr., again, 32 of 54. This man threw over 50 passes in multiple games. And I kept saying he's spraying it all over the field. And yeah, they're moving the ball and they're scoring points. And Kalen DeBoer's like, yeah, let's go. I'm like, if they mix in the run a little bit more, it could be even more in the pass game. But still, Michael Penix Jr., and I'm not picking on one. I was big fans of what they did all year long in the pack. But yeah, he has so 32 of 54. 287 yards, 2 touchdowns, to throw an interception. But they did rush the ball. Wayne Talapapa, 14 carries, 108 yards, 7.7 per rush, 1 rushing touchdown for Talapapa. Receiving wise, Jalen McMillan had 8 catches for 58 yards. Romo Dunze, they were kind of bracketing him a little bit, but 5 catches for 57 yards. Oh, McMillan did have one of the 2 receiving touchdowns. Did Jalen McMillan. Romo Dunze, like I said, 5 for 57. Taj Davis had 4 for 32, and the other receiving touchdown from Michael Penix Jr. Washington didn't fumble the ball. And it's, again, you look at what this offense did, again, mixing in the run game with, like I said, Talapapa. Michael Penix Jr., who was not sacked at all. And that's one thing. Washington, I think, all year long gave up, I want to say, like 5 sacks in old notes, 5 to 7 sacks. Like Michael Penix Jr., with all he threw, only got sacked 5 times, 5 to 7 times. Like it didn't go to double digits. So they kept him clean. Again, the Huskies defense, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for losses. And yeah, just an overall great season for the Huskies. They get to 11 wins. And like I said, just the 2 losses back-to-back weeks on the road at UCLA, who's ranked at the time, and at Arizona State, who, well, wasn't ranked and never ranked all season long. But yeah, 11 wins for the Huskies. So looking forward to see what they do. Michael Penix Jr., I want to say, I think will be back next year. But if not, with what Kalen DeBoer, what he did at Fresno State and what he can do, it's just one of those things where you're like, wow. So, yeah. And this next game, though, oh my goodness. Well, I'm going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we'll get to UCLA and Pitt in the Sun Bowl here on Pac-12 Review on the Sideline Sports Network. Back here on Pac-12 Review, I am Michael Caratenuto on the Sideline Sports Network at Diablo00. Hit me up on Twitter. Let's chat. Let's have some fun with football season. And again, I appreciate those that have chimed in, sent messages. And all that good stuff, because again, it has been very, very fun to be doing it. So yeah, so bowl season again, it was a roller coaster. They were insane games, which is the best part. But now we're going to get to the UCLA Pitt game, which again, crazy insane. Pitt wins 37-35 on a late field goal. So UCLA was up 7-6 after 1. They were up 21-14 at halftime. They were up 28-21 at the end of 3 going into the 4th. And then they get outscored 16-7 in the 4th. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, though, 16-24. No Zach Charbonnet in this game, again, which that young man's going pro. I know, and rightfully so, Bijan Robinson, probably the top running back in this draft. But Zach Charbonnet, that young man is right there as well. So talent-wise, I think he's a borderline. I think he could be an end of the first round guy, definitely talent-wise. Now, with running backs, they spend a pick that high. I don't know, man. You see what Josh Jacobs did this year, and people say, well, they didn't pick up the option contract here. Josh Jacobs, he's been doing that the whole time with the Raiders. Zach Charbonnet, and I'm not saying they're the same type of runner, but Zach Charbonnet, especially as a receiver out of the backfield too. Like I say late first round. It could be second round, but I could see, second, third round because running back. But man, running back that can be a receiver like that. And again, just the speed, the power, and the receiver. I mean, it's I'm not, and again, size wise, but might be a little bit bigger than Tony Pollard. But I mean, think of it, Tony Pollard. So I again seeing him, and I'm down. I mean, Bijan Robinson, saw that young man in high school and what he did at Texas and what he can do at the backfield as well. I think Charbonnet might just be maybe a little quicker as a receiver, but nonetheless, I get Bijan Robinson all day, so he can do it as well. But yeah, no Zach Charbonnet in this game. But yeah, DTR 16 to 24, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, but 3 picks. After he went out, Ethan Garbers came in and he was 6 for 9 for 39 yards, no touchdowns, 1 interception. TJ Harden, though, I mean, in Charbonnet's absence, TJ Harden, 11 carries, 111 yards, 10.1 per carry, 1 rushing touchdown. DTR had 5 carries for 15 yards and the other rushing touchdown. Keegan Jones, 7 carries for 20 yards. So, I mean, they made a concerted – Chip Kelly offense always going to make a concerted effort to run the ball. I mean, yes, they did pass for 310, but they ran for 141. Nick Patty, again, 20 of 41 for Pitt, 224 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Rodney Hammond Jr., this young man, powerful. 25 carries for 93 yards, 3.7 a carry, but 2 rushing touchdowns. And Patty also, he had 10 carries for 72 yards and had to overcome 1 sack. A UCLA team that did get to the quarterback quite a bit this year, but had 1 sack. So he had to overcome those yards. But yeah, Nick Patty, 10 carries for 72 yards, obviously 7.2 per carry. So solid game there. Receiving wise, the 1 touchdown pass went to Bub Means, who had 4 catches for 84 yards, and the touchdown. Konata Mumfield had 7 catches for 78 yards, averaging 11.1 per catch, and Jared Wayne had 5 for 50, getting the 10 yards per catch. So yeah, I mean, 11.4 per reception, 4.4 per rush yards, but I mean, still rushing for 203, throwing for 240. And yeah, it came down to it for UCLA. I mean, you look at Cam Brown, 4 catches for 15 yards. Kashmir Allen didn't play, and this young man, again, he had opted out. He's a Sunday guy. I mean, he is definitely a Sunday guy, as is Zach Charbonnet for the Bruins. I mean, Chip Kelly tends to have those guys, but TJ Harden, but Cam Brown, 4 catches, 115 yards, 28.8 per reception. Titus Mokiao Adimalala, pardon me. Sorry, Titus. So Titus Mokiao Adimalala had 3 catches for 89 yards and 1 touchdown. Jake Bobo, again, they bracketed him a lot. Another big-time receiver who played. You can see him in his 6'5" frame, again, solid pattern runner. I mean, tight end, receiver, hybrid type. And but Jake Bobo only had 3 catches for 28 yards. So, and Logan Loya had the other touchdown reception. So I said, Adi Malala had the 1, and then Logan Loya had 3 catches for 26 yards, the other touchdown reception. But yeah, I mean, so for UCLA, you're thinking, oh, okay. And they had 2 fumbles and they lost 1. But yeah, Pitt defensively, I mean, 3 sacks, 7 tackles for losses. UCLA, 1 sack, 6 tackles for losses. UCLA also, because Nick Patty, like I said, 20-41, 224, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. His 1 pick, though, was a pick 6. Jalen Davies took it 52 yards to the house. And again, that's when I thought, oh, man, it's definitely keep going to go UCLA's way. But again, DTR went out, and that was that. And not that Ethan Garbers didn't look good, but at the same time, like, not getting, again, a ton of the snaps. And it's one of those things, getting ready for a bowl game. So yeah, 37-35, UCLA loses to Pitt. And that is, that wraps up their season as they, finished 9-4. So yes, the Cotton Bowl, USC and Tulane, insane, 46-45. Look, Caleb Williams, again, hamstring issue in the Pac-12 championship game, but Utah, again, able to beat him. Utah able to definitely beat up on them. But Caleb Williams threw 52 passes, 37 for 52, 462 yards, 462 yards, 5 touchdowns, did have a blemish with 1 interception. So they threw for 462. They rushed for 132. Raleek Brown, 6 for 61. Austin Jones, they try to get him going, 22 carries for 61 yards as well. But the Tulane defense was, the Green Wave were just swallowing him up. Caleb Williams had 4 carries for 10 yards, and he had but he didn't get sacked. Did have 8 tackles for losses, but Williams never got sacked in this game. But yeah, what USC did, and obviously Lincoln Riley in his first year, but man, defensively, again, you give up 46. You score 45, but you get outscored by 1. But Brendan Rice, man, this young man, Jerry Rice's son, 6 catches for 174 yards and 2 touchdowns, 29 yards per reception. Yeah, it sounds like his dad. Taj Washington, 5 for 109. Mario Williams had 6 for 35. Michael Jackson, the third, 4 for 31. He had one. Well, so Brendan Rice had 2 touchdowns. Michael Jackson, the third, had 1. Terrell Bynum had 3 for 26 and a touchdown. And then Kyron Hudson had rounded out the receiving touchdowns. So he had 4 catches for 23 yards and a touchdown. But I mean, what Caleb Williams was able to do, this offensive line, again, keeping him clean as they did most of the year. And yes, his scrambling definitely helps that. And yeah, he looked better than he did, obviously, at the end of the Pac-12 championship game. But man, they score 45, and you're thinking, oh, he throws for 462. They're going to win. I mean, Michael Pratt, the Tulane quarterback, threw 17 passes. 17. The team threw 1. There was a trick play, but he was 8 for 17, 234 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Tyjae Spears, here's the thing. He rushed for 205 yards, 17 carries for 205, 12.1 per carry, 4 rushing touchdowns for Tyjae Spears. And Michael Pratt ran. He may have not thrown a ton, but he had 15 carries for 83 yards. He was sacked 4 times, so he had to overcome all that. Still had 15 carries for 83 yards. Did Michael Pratt. So it was, look, Tulane stuck with their game plan, battled back. Jarius Moore had the interception again, and you look at, Dennis Lynch missed a field goal. He's 1 for 2. He hits that field goal, they win the game. 6 for 6 in extra points, though. So it's, again, man, absolute insane game. Hats off to Tulane. They won 46-45. SC finishes 11-3. And again, Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams coming back, the Heisman Trophy winner coming back. And we go from there. And lastly, look, Utah and Penn State. I mentioned in the beginning, Sean Clifford, 16-21, only threw 21 passes, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he had Nicholas Singleton had 7 catches for 120 yards, 17.1 per reception. His long was 87, though. And that was on a touchdown. But Singleton had 2 touchdowns, 7 for 120, 2 touchdowns. And Katron Allen had 11 for 37 and the other touchdown for Penn State. Cam Rising was 8 for 21 before he went out, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. So the Penn State defense was already getting to him. But again, it's just a bummer that he couldn't try and work through that and finish the game. Bryson Barnes, who won up at Washington State, he was 10 for 19, 1 touchdown, 1 interception for Barnes coming in relief. Jaquindon Jackson had 13 carries for 81 yards and 1 rushing touchdown. The 2 receiving, Devon Vele, who this young man had an insane season. He had 5 catches for 100 yards. Jalen Dixon had 6 for 64 and 1 touchdown. And then Thomas Yasmin had 1 catch for 1 yard, but it was a 1-yard touchdown. So it was tough. Again, Kyle Whittingham and his team, again, some tough losses this year at UCLA on the road, at Oregon on the road. And to Florida on the road, and then Penn State in the Rose Bowl. So again, but physical team, they'll be back in the mix next year too. And again, Cam Rising has another year of eligibility with the injury. I mean, we'll see. He could declare. I don't know what that would do draft wise for him, but this young man definitely has Sunday talent. I mean, teeny bit of refining in my eyes, but this young man definitely, I mean, I think could be playing on Sundays. We'll see if he comes back to Utah next season. But man, now it is time. It is time. The championship game is here tonight as Georgia trying to go back-to-back, defend their national title, taking on TCU, the Horned Frogs, as people are calling them Cinderella. And I said I wasn't going to say it in the beginning, and they're not a Cinderella. They want their people to say, oh, their schedule, this and that, but they won't talk about the sorry teams that a lot of other teams in the playoff have played, or quote unquote their schedule. I shouldn't say sorry teams, because in this day and age, I'm sorry, there are no sorry teams, but with what other verbiage people use. So to me, that's TCU is not a Cinderella. I mean, what they can do offensively, yeah, what they can do offensively, and even defense. They play physical against Michigan. Yes, Michigan moved the ball and scored points, but guess what? TCU kept their quarterback, Max Duggan, very clean, and he made plays. So, I mean, it's going to be and look, those of you that know, it's one of those things where when we look at this game, okay, so let's see what Georgia's down to, or up to, I should say, down, up, either one. So yeah, Georgia is at -13 and the over-under is 63. So they're saying it'd be like a 40-21 game in that area, because that'd be 61. I just, first of all, I don't see TCU only getting 20. Georgia's defense is not Georgia's defense from last year. Is it very good? Yes. Don't hit me up on Twitter at Diablo00 saying, how can you talk about college football? Georgia's defense is good. It is not the same as it was last year. LSU in the championship game, yes, I know Georgia put up 50 on their defense. I'm not saying LSU's defense is world beaters, but offensively, LSU moved the ball. And then you have what Ohio State did. And against Georgia. And like I said, it's one of those things where when you look at it, -13 to me, again, make sure, like my good friend Rooster says, make sure it's your movie money, because you're giving me 13 points and TCU. Man, I'll definitely take it. But again, that's why they build those monstrosities, as we call casinos. That's why they build them. But yeah, I mean, look, Georgia's defense and what Kirby Smart has done, and offensively, Stetson Bennett the fourth, again, had a heck of a season, throwing for over 3,800 yards. But yeah, let's look at it. When you look at, all right, TCU from a team standpoint in the Big 12 this year, number one in total yards, 474.1 yards per game. Passing, 269 yards per game. Rushing, 204 yards a game. Third. Oh, so third in rushing, third in passing, first in total yards. Okay. Then when you look at them on defense, fourth in the Big 12, 25 points allowed per game. Then you look at yards allowed, fifth in the Big 12, 385.1. So outgaining their opponents by a football field a game. And then when we look at sacks, though, they are tied for fourth with Oklahoma, West Virginia. They had 26 sacks on the season. So it's 2 sacks per game. Not a ton when you think of it in the grand scheme, but if you get those 2 at the right times, knock somebody at a field goal range. stop somebody on get a sack on a fourth down, which as football fans, that's one of those huge things. So, yeah, I mean, and then you look at what they did. I mean, what Max Duggan tops in the Big 12, 3,546 yards passing, number one in the Big 12. And then on top of that, I mean, he completed 63.7% of his passes, 3,546 yards, like I said, 32 touchdowns to just 6 interceptions. He did get sacked 24 times this year, though. So, I mean, in 13 games, that's less than twice a game. So, yeah, with the amount that he threw, that's not too bad at all. It's not Michael Penix like rarefied air number, but it's definitely very good. But yeah, I mean, 3,546 yards, 32 touchdowns. And he was tops. Rushing wise, you look at Kendre Miller, 1,399 yards on the season, third in the Big 12, and 224 carries for those 1,399 yards, 6.2 per carry, 17 rushing touchdowns for Kendre Miller. They can run the ball. And then you also look at Amari DiMercado, 107 carries for 622 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns. He's averaging 5.8 per carry, as Miller's averaging 6.2. So, look, it is passing, but again, those air raid, offenses, tribute to Mike Leach. Obviously, Sonny Dykes is a Mike Leach descendant, paying tribute to him, and rightfully so. But Sonny Dykes is that. But man, you have to be able to have backs that can tote the rock, and they definitely do. So, I mean, and when you look, I mean, it's very, very interesting. Max Duggan for TCU, 127 carries on the season, 461 yards, 3.6 per carry. Again, not too bad, but 8 rushing touchdowns for Max Duggan too. It's like I said, it's very, you figure 40 total touchdowns for this young man that he has accounted for this season as Max Duggan. You flip it over to the defense and team wise, I mean, look at TCU. Like I said, they're right there in yards allowed per game in conference and only giving up 25 points per game. And when you're scoring as much as they are, only giving up 20, 25 a game, not too bad, not too shabby. And they were fourth. Now, on the other side, look. Oh, I was going to say, receiving wise, for TCU, Quentin Johnson. I mean, this guy's a Sunday man. He's one of 3 receivers in the Big 12 to have over 1,000 yards. He had 1,066 yards receiving. Marvin Mims Jr. From Oklahoma was second. He had 1,083, and then Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State. This young man, 1,171 yards. Yeah. He definitely money is Quentin Johnson. And with those 1,066 yards, which came on 59 receptions, so 18.1 per reception. His long in the season was 76, 6 receiving touchdowns for Quentin Johnson. And you look at Tay Barber as well, 36 catches for 605 yards, 16.8 per reception, 5 receiving touchdowns. And look, yes, they can throw the ball. Max Dugg improved it. I mean, Savion Williams, 29 catches for 392 yards and 4 touchdowns for TCU. So again, but Quentin Johnson, this young man's worth the price of admission. That's what I will say, because he is. And then when you look at defensively, D Winters, or pardon me, Dylan Horton for TCU had 10 sacks on the season, led the Big 12 in sacks. His teammate, D Williams, was third with 7.5 sacks. So, yeah, they're getting after the ball. And then interception-wise, Bud Clark had 5 on the season. This young man, again, the way they play defense, it's an aggressive style. And people say, oh, you say that about all defenses. No, because a lot of defenses will play within a system, and not that it's not aggressive on your pass rush to get it, but they're going to be getting after the quarterback. And again, when you have 2 guys, 17.5 sacks between Horton and Winters, yeah, that frees up somebody like Bud Clark in the back end. So, yeah, it's it's interesting because sack-wise, like I said, they had 26, but 2 guys had 17.5 for that. But look, now we flip over to Georgia quickly. We know that Georgia, again, offensively, let's start there. I mean, Stetson Bennett the 4th, but 494.9 yards per game, 3rd in the SEC. Passing wise, 293 even, 3rd in conference for them. Rushing, 201.9 yards per game for the Bulldogs, 4th in the SEC. And when you look at the players, I mean, Stetson Bennett the 4th, 2nd in the SEC behind Will Rogers of Mississippi State. But yeah, Stetson Bennett the 4th, 3,823 yards passing this season. He completed 292 of 429 passes, 68.1% completion percentage. Like I said, for those 3,823 yards, 23 touchdowns and just 7 interceptions. Only got sacked 9 times this year. So on 429 dropbacks, only got sacked 9 times. Yeah, their offensive line can play to overstate the obvious with what they have at Georgia. Rushing wise for Georgia, Kenny McIntosh had 142 carries for 779 yards on the season, as he was 142 carries for 779 yards and 10 touchdowns rushing touchdowns McIntosh had. So it's an offense that, yes, is going to run the ball. That was 12th in the SEC. Then you got Dajuan Edwards had 135 carries for 739 yards, another 7 touchdowns. So yeah, when you look at it like that, it's receiving wise now. Georgia had, Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee. If you didn't see this young man play, you're going to be seeing him play on Sundays, first of all. But second of all, you missed out. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Jalen Hyatt, man-child, absolutely insane. But Brock Bowers, he's tight end, 56 receptions, 790 yards on the season, 14.1 per reception, 6 receiving touchdowns for Brock Bowers. Then you had Ladd McConkey, wide receiver, 53 catches, 674 yards, and 12.7 per catch, 5 touchdowns. They're going to spread the ball around, is Georgia. And even Kenny McIntosh out of the backfield, 42 catches, 505 yards, 12 yards per reception, 2 touchdowns. So again, they got different ways to get you, and you got to try to get to Stetson Bennett, which again only got sacked 9 times on the year. So, but they're gonna get it. And then defensively, when you look at Georgia team-wise, number 1 in points allowed, 12.8, number 1 in total yards, 292.1 in the SEC. And then sack-wise, Georgia is 7th. They also had 26 sacks on the season. So it's, again, at this point, you see 2 per game. And like I said, not a ton, but when are you getting those 2 sacks per game? And are your pass rushers, and a lot of times, yes, sacks are great and you see it, but the quarterback hurries. Are you knocking the ball down out of his hand and causing fumbles, which isn't going to be a sack, but it's going to be a caused fumble. So, man, look, I love this matchup. I think it is a phenomenal, phenomenal matchup. And I am going with TCU in this game. And I'm just saying straight up, I'm saying to win the game, I say TCU wins. Again, the -13, the over under 63. I would tend to go over. And I would take, if you're doing the spread, I'm taking TCU anyway. But no, I think TCU wins it. I think it's going to be a hell of a game. There will be points scored. Like I said, the Georgia defense is really good. The TCU defense is good, but the Georgia defense is not the same as it was last year. Like up front on the D line. Again, those guys they're very good. Hear me. Listen to Jimmy and hear Jimmy. Shout out to Wesley Snipes, Woody Harrelson, White Man Can't Jump. Don't just listen to Jimmy. Hear Jimmy. Georgia's defense is good. It's not the same as it was last year. Their offensive line, though, very good. TCU is a physical team. We shall see what happens. I'm going Horned Frogs. It's recorded. It's here. I will see you Friday. Again, thank you, everybody, for joining me here on Pac-12 Review and preview the national title game. Going to get out of here. Everybody enjoy the national championship game. And, yeah, hit me up on Twitter at Diablo00. Let me know what you think of it during the game. Absolutely love to have some fun with it. So I will see you on Friday. Same bat time, same bat channel here on the Sideline Sports Network. But until Friday, enjoy the national championship game. And, as I always say, forks up.